Good afternoon, and thank you for attending. I'm George Lennon, the Director of Communication for the Forest Service, and today we are here to have a policy announcement on the proposed road management policy by Forest Service Chief Mike Dombeck. But before I actually introduce Chief Dombeck, I'd like to introduce the rest of the panel that's here to assist in this announcement. And for the folks who are calling in, I'm going to say their name, and I will spell their name, so especially for the reporters, you'll have at least one correct spelling. With Chief Dombeck is Dale Bosworth, the Northern Regional Forester. He also served as the team leader for the policy, for the proposed policy. Dale Bosworth's last name is spelled Bosworth. Also here today is Jack Troyer. Jack Troyer is the Deputy Regional Forester for the Intermountain region. He served as the assistant team leader. Jack's last name is spelled Troyer. Also, another member of the team is Mike Ash. Mike Ash is the Deputy Director of Engineering, the Washington office, and he was the technical engineer on the team. His last name is spelled A-S-H. And finally, Pam Gardner. Pam is the Deputy Forest Supervisor for Wasatch Cache, located right here in Salt Lake City. And her last name is spelled Gardiner. A few ground rules. We only have about an hour for this news conference, and so I ask that if we can keep our questions kind of short. Sometimes we get 5-minute questions, and in fairness to all the people, we have about 15 people, 20 people already on the line waiting to ask questions. I will try to referee as we get the questions both from here in the audience and the people on the phone. So please limit yourself to one follow-up question, and if we can, we'll come back to you. Specific local questions should be directed to your customary local contact, whether it's a PAO in the forest or in the regional office. And just for information of the folks here in the room, we're trying some high tech. We have opened up this contract to try to get people from around the country who has just much interest in this decision as you folks here. And so what we're going to be doing is I'll be taking questions from both the telephone, from callers, and you folks in the room. If there are no questions on our procedures today, I'd like to at this time introduce Chief Mike Dombeck.
Well, thanks, George, and I want to thank all of you for coming out here. I think the number of people in the room here, as well as the number of people on the line, are probably directly related to the level of interest of this issue that we're talking about here today. And I think most everyone knows the issue of roads, in fact, and the infrastructure in our national forests, and so many of the same challenges we have in the national forests are also true for the Bureau of Land Management, the Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the state agencies. So it's obviously an area of tremendous interest of a lot of people. I really want to thank Dale and the team that have worked on this issue. As you know, we've been working on the issue of roads for some time, and the issue of roads and maintenance backlog, these are issues that are decades old. These are not issues that are new issues to the Forest Service, and I'm proud of the people that have been working on this, because I think what is new is the leadership that we've attempted to provide to get beyond some of the intractable issues that have faced the agency, not only this agency, but other agencies for some time. And if we think about the activities that occur on national forests, there probably are only a few activities that really leave a permanent, indelible mark on the landscape, and certainly road building is one of those. And we have a system of the 380,000 miles of roads on the national forest that many of these roads are decades old, that perhaps were designed and put in place at a time when good technologies, good engineering just wasn't available. And so a lot of things have changed since we've really gone through our road management policy and the decision-making process. And there are all kinds of problems and challenges associated with roads. If you think about some of the environmental problems, you know, the soil erosion, the avenues for introduction of noxious weeds. We've got a higher incidence of forest fires in areas that are eroded. The forest health issues that many of us are very, very concerned with are more common in areas where we have more roads. So there's a whole array of environmental issues associated with roads. Another challenge we have is the substandard condition of many of our roads. And we have, I mentioned 380,000 miles of roads, yet we get the funding only to maintain 20% of those roads to the environmental and safety standards for which they were designed. So we've got a large portion of the system that, in a sense, is crumbling and causing stream sedimentation, affecting spawning habitats of aquatic species, in some cases endangered species, affecting water quality. Right here at Mill Creek is an example, I think, of a very, very important watershed to this local area because it provides drinking water to these areas. So there are all sorts of facets to this issue, and yet we're saddled with an $8 billion, that's with a B, a $8 billion backlog in our deferred maintenance and our reconstruction of this infrastructure that is in many cases decades old. Well, you know, in 1988, we, you know, after deliberating within the agency and talking to a lot of people about how to move forward with this issue, we decided we really had to focus on to bring our policies up to date and use the best science. And the components of that process really have to be, we've got to involve the community of interest, the local publics, the local authorities, because a road system on a national forest is not something that's separate from a transportation network that the county has, that the community has, and they really need to be considered as a unit, because road systems are expensive to maintain. Dollars are scarce, and we want a system that's compatible and that is forward-thinking in meeting the needs of the communities, meeting the needs of an increasing number of recreationists that are using our national forest. It's kind of interesting if you look at that curve on the chart here of vehicles per day on the national forest. From 1950 to 1996, we've seen more than a tenfold increase in vehicle travel associated with recreation and tourism and other kinds of local uses. And if you take a look at the use of the roads associated with what most people think is the traditional use of timber management and timber harvest, it's basically been flat. You know, and I'm one that grew up in a national forest, the Chequamegon National Forest in northern Wisconsin. I grew up on Forest Road 164. And today that road is blacktopped. It's a mail route, it's a bus route, and you know, in addition to the logging and tourism and other activities, there's lots of local people that are going to and from work every day that use these roads. So these roads are really an integral part of a community. So we need the community of interest involved in the decision-making process. We've got to more carefully consider decisions about where we build new roads. When you have 380,000 miles and you've got an $8 billion backlog, what do? You put the shovel down and stop digging the hole deeper and really focus on priorities, on needs involving people. And I see the process working like this, where we get together with the community of interest, the officials, and take a look at what our road network is in the framework of an atlas, and prioritize what are the most important roads. And knowing that we have more than we can afford to maintain, what do we do with the others? Do we turn them into hiking trails, biking trails? Are they in environmentally sensitive areas that they've got to be relocated? Do they need to be obliterated? Do they need to be gated? Do they need to be decommissioned? There are all sorts of options, I think, that fit into the local planning process and the local deliberative process that we need to focus on. And some roads we may have to upgrade because 80% of the use is on 20% of the roads. And as we see the use of the national forest right here on the Wasatch Front just increase as the Salt Lake City area continues to grow and prosper, more and more people have more and more time to spend up there, you know, in the mountains, in the forest, hiking, biking, camping, hunting, fishing, skiing, all the things that people really want to live in this area that they value for, and we need to maintain those values. The last thing we need to do is make sure that we've got a commitment to work with the local communities. We're working with Congress. Senator Bennett is on the Appropriations Committee, a good friend of ours, understands the issues, wants to help to get funding to take care of the roads that we have. Because an interesting thing with this backlog, these are local jobs. It's about local jobs. It's about contractors out there doing the work that needs to be done, whether it's the maintenance, the decommissioning, replacing bridges. We have 7,200 bridges on the National Forest. Mike Ash, our expert engineer there, I said to him a couple of weeks ago, I said, how many culverts do we have? And he said, probably over 1 million on the 192 million acres of national forest. So I think that sort of defines the issue and the playing field that we work in with regard to the national forest. And the thing that we did in 1998 is basically call a timeout on constructing new roads in unroaded areas. Roads, in the sense of the debate, and when you ask the question, why weren't they funded? It was really used as a surrogate for another issue, whether or not to cut timber. And yet only a very, very small percentage of roads on the national forest are associated with timber harvest today. And I really feel good about where we're going with this issue, because I think we have truly defined it in the framework of a transportation network that's part of the needs of a local community. And in fact, I'm pleased that for the decades, about 2 decades of debate over the Forest Service roads budget, the last 2 sessions of Congress, there has been no issues to the magnitude of what we had in the past. You know, in 1996, we came within 1 vote in the House of Representatives of losing 80% of the roads budget. In 1997, we came within 1 vote of the Senate of losing 25% of the budget. And it was essentially because of this intractable debate that we were involved in that we've got to extract ourselves from and move on. And that's why I'm so pleased to be announcing the new proposed policy that deals with the roads and the network in the national forest. And let me just cover a few of the things that the policy outlines. Number 1 is we need a science-based process on the most up-to-date scientific engineering technologies as we run through an analysis that includes public involvement. We all need a road system that meets the needs of the local communities, of the resource management needs, in compliance with the various laws of the land, and that's very important. We've got to carefully consider and screen proposals for new roads. The decisions to build new roads, we've got to consider funding available to maintain those roads decade after decade after decade. It's always popular to build something new, but then when it comes to getting the paintbrush out 20 years later, or the hammer and nails, there's much less enthusiasm for the maintenance that's important. So we've got to take care of the maintenance and reconstruction needs and really give the appropriate level of funding to the most heavily used, the most important roads, to the community and to the management of the forest. And then, as I said in my introduction, the decision-making process needs to involve the community of interest, the local publics, the officials, to determine, based on this analysis and the atlas of roads that are out there, what are we going to do with the roads that we can't afford, that we don't need? So it's been a tough issue. I've had lots of hearings on the issue, but I'm really proud of the work that this team has done as we move forward. So what you'll see tomorrow is the official Federal Register notice will be out that begins a 60-day public comment period. And we expect to finalize the policy. I hope to sign the rule by September 1 that lays out this whole effort. Now, there's, I know I hear from constituencies, and I know you have lots of interest and hear from people that this is about access. The fact of the matter is we're losing access to national forests because of our inability to maintain roads. We're losing about 1,000 miles a year of our arterial and collector roads because they're falling apart because of inability to maintain them. So, and our policy is that the access issues will be addressed through the local planning process at the local level. And you know, we just encourage all the folks that are interested in this issue to get involved. It's my belief that the administrative rulemaking process is one of the more balanced processes in a democracy because it puts everybody on an equal plane. We have some of the best information ever up on the web on this issue, and I want to give you that web address as www.fs.fed/us/news/roads, and that will hyperlink you to a variety of other issues like roadless and other things that are in process, as well as provide us with lots of information. So I think what I'll do is I think I'll just stop here, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about for a while. I'll take some questions from those of you that are here in the room, and then at some point George is going to say to me, "Sit down, Chief," and we'll hear from the folks that are on the telephone lines as well.
Can you project where you think most bitter opposition will come from, if any?
I think a real clear understanding of this issue of roads and the maintenance of our infrastructure we'll probably see limited, if any, opposition. I got to tell you, when I flew out here this morning, I sat next to an individual that was going to Deer Valley skiing. He owns 25 Hallmark stores in the D.C. area, and he was looking at me, watching me look at my notes on roads, and I explained the issue to him, and he said, you know, I wouldn't think of opening a new store if I couldn't afford carpeting for my older stores. So that's essentially the issue that we're in, and so there will be concerns, but I believe the concerns are based more on misinformation than on information, and that's why we're working so hard to really make sure that people understand what this issue is about.
Yeah, Mr. Dombeck, you said that the federal funding has been held back to a large measure because of efforts to cut back on timber use of the forest areas. You know, I was just thinking in Congress about that. How does this new rulemaking address that concern? Does it sidestep it, or does timber harvest still get a real high priority when you're talking about what's an important road and what's not?
Well, the roads issue was really used, I believe, as a surrogate for another debate. And so I think it's more of an understanding of that the roads network has much broader values than just timber harvest. And and I think that graph really makes the case. If we take a look at what our roads were used for in 1950 compared to what our roads are used for today, there's a compelling need for us in the richest country in the world to take care of our infrastructure. So I think it was a matter of redefining the issue.
Do you think that issue will go away in Congress, though?
I think we'll make significant progress. In fact, at a House hearing that I had, we have both, the ranking Democrat as well as the chairman of the committee talking about the need to fund and maintain the system. And the thing that's neat about this is sort of coming out a very time when timber harvest has been going down and down for a variety of reasons, and there are concerns in local communities about jobs. And if this isn't a local jobs program, I don't know what is, to take care of our infrastructure that goes beyond roads, trails, campgrounds, picnic sites, those kinds of things.
What do the environmentalists say about this?
Well, I would hope they would welcome this approach. I have what I've got here is really the most up-to-date synthesis of information, science-based, as the analysis process that could be used, the questions that should be asked when you're analyzing a transportation network, a road system in our national forests. And I think what you're going to see, and this is put together by our own scientists and reviewed by lots of people, and I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of rural communities and counties using this kind of process as they analyze their road network. So my hope is they'll welcome it. But we'll find out through the comment period over the course of the next 60 days. Yes?
This policy only affects non-roadless areas, or does it also affect road?
Well, this is about roads, so it doesn't affect areas where there are no roads.
So only in areas that are considered roaded areas does this policy affect?
That's right.
And how many acres is that? How many?
In the about 110, 120, 130 million. Yeah.
So when you're talking about proposals to build new roads, you're only talking in non-roadless areas?
Well, I think maybe we're talking a little bit about semantics because there's if there's no roads, you can't, there isn't a road to analyze. But the part of it that this does address is the analysis process you would go through if you want to put a new road in anywhere. Whether you've got to take a road out of a riparian area that may be bleeding sediment into a stream and move it up, on the top of the ridge where it's more stable, where it's less prone to failure, landslides, soil erosion, that kind of thing.
Another question I had was, you say you want to use science-based management and techniques to analyze roads and road building and road obliteration and so forth and upgrading, but you also want to involve the locals. How do you envision difference of opinions in local communities? Because I see that the locals here in Salt Lake may accept a certain action more than the locals in, say, Jarvidge or Elko, Nevada.
The balance of interest is always a challenge to deal with because the lands belong to all of the people of the United States. If you live there, you feel a special, I grew up as I said, in a national forest, you feel a special connection and perhaps make your living in an area like that. And that's part of what the planning process is all about, to get together and help people understand that there are differences. But I think in the end, most people, in fact virtually everyone, I think wants to do what's right for the land in the long haul, because what we're about is stewards of the land, and that's why taxpayers pay my salary and the salary of the folks sitting up here with me, is we want to assure that we have these values for future generations.
Excuse me, one follow-up, and we'll come back to you, we have time, but Mike, I have about 15 people on the telephone I'd like to also ask you some questions. So if you don't mind, please have a seat. And Brent?
Yes, sir.
Can we go ahead and take our first call?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Representing the Boston Globe, our first question comes from the line of Robert Braille. Please go ahead.
Chief Dombeck, I'm a little bit confused about the policy itself. As you may know, some of us are having a hard time getting it. It's not to be in the Federal Register tomorrow. We can't seem to find it anywhere. I'm wondering if you could talk specifically about some of what the policy would require. You mentioned a minute ago about how it would involve the analysis process, for instance, that a forest would have to go through to put in a new road anywhere. Are there other specifics like that you can offer?
Yes, in fact, what I'll do is ask my expert here, Dale Bosworth, that led this whole effort to, I think, give you some details.
The most important thing in the proposed policy would be the use of the road analysis process to help make better decisions for when we would when and where we would build new roads, when we would reconstruct roads, when we'd relocate roads, when we decommission roads. And it also would help us do a better job of prioritizing the limited maintenance dollars we have, so we'll be more effective in using those maintenance dollars. There's also an emphasis on looking at decommissioning unneeded roads, and those would be roads that are not needed for management of the National Forest, and prioritize decommissioning of roads that are causing the biggest problems and that are unneeded. Those are probably the most important things. There's a requirement to maintain an atlas of all roads on national forests, both classified as well as unclassified roads, so that we can move forward and restore those areas where there's unclassified roads, either that or add them to the classified system. So there's a number of items that the policy does, but probably the most important, as I said, was the use of the road analysis process to make those decisions.
I'm sorry, the name of that process again?
Want to read that?
Brent, this is Mike again. It's road analysis process. Road analysis informed decision making about managing the National Forest Transportation System, and this is a science-based approach, a synthesis of many years of research that was authored by a variety of engineers with the input of fisheries biologists, hydrologists, soil scientists, geomorphologists, and all sorts of disciplines that are tough for me to spell. I want to make a point, though, for everyone here, that one thing that's significantly different that Dale mentioned is this concept of an atlas, because in the past, I think we've come through an era where we've looked at our issues in a piecemeal basis. And now with the satellite imagery and the various things that we have, to be able to step back and look at the cumulative effects of the whole system, and then how the system interacts and how it can complement others and set priorities is really tools that are new to this. Well, I guess it's 2000, but it was new in the 1990s, so it's really a tremendous step forward in our analysis process.
Next, from the Rocky Mountain News, is Deborah Frazier. Please go ahead.
Yes. Given the limited amount of money to build new roads and the limited amount of money to maintain existing roads, will this policy, say 5 years down the road, result in fewer roads in general in the Forest Service or more roads in the Forest Service lands?
I would, if I would venture a guess, the probably fewer roads. And what we're doing is taking a look at the process of prioritizing what's most important to what's least important. And I think you'll see roads that are of low priority converted to things like hiking trails, biking trails, perhaps hunter walking trails, other kinds of uses like that.
Did you have a follow-up question, Ms. Frazier?
Done at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sherry Devlin with the Missoulian. Please go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering if you could talk more specifically about what guidelines you'll be looking at when you consider new roads, and also if you could talk about what is the status of the moratorium on road building in roadless areas. Does that expire as of tomorrow when you publish the Federal Register?
I'll ask Dale to take the first part of your question, but the second part of your question is this rule does not go into effect tomorrow. This is a proposed rule that will be out for a 60-day public comment period. The temporary suspension of road building in unroaded areas expires, I believe, on September 1, and it's our hope to have this rule in place by that time.
Examples of compelling need include, but aren't limited to, public safety, critical resource restoration, access required by statute, treaty, or pursuant to reserved or outstanding rights. Did we get your whole question answered, Sherry?
think so. And so you'll look at those, plus talk to the local community
Yes,
in deciding whether to build new roads.
that's true.
And is that a similar kind of list that what kind of list do you look at when you're deciding about decommissioning roads, existing roads?
Well, it'd be similar. I guess what we'd be looking at would be the actual, need for the road, the liabilities that the road causes, and the benefits that the road affords, and prioritizing that, as Mike said, into a list of what actions we take, whether it's in decommission or whether it's in.
Yes, indeed. We have 8 participants queued up. Our next question comes from Joel Southern. Mr. Southern, representing the Alaska Public Radio, please go ahead.
A couple of questions for Chief Dombeck. Chief, a parochial one and a general one. You've heard ad nauseum, ad infinitum over the years from the congressional delegation from Alaska about the unique circumstances of Alaska. Is there anything contemplated in these proposals that would treat the Tongass and Chugach any differently from other forests?
Well, the analysis process in each part of the country is different. It is different because it's based on different geology, different watershed characteristics, groundwater, streams, all those kinds of things. So in that sense, it's different. But with regard to the application of a process, this technical process, will apply as well. But there is one difference, and that's with the Tongass Timber Reform Act has some somewhat different requirements.
Okay, and my general question is this. I was talking to a top congressional staffer dealing with forest issues about this yesterday. I know you were trying to decouple the issue of the roadless initiative and this, but he said to me that, well, that's well and fine, but the whole flap over roadless has poisoned the atmosphere for working with the Forest Service over this. How would you respond to that?
I think that the roadless issue is also an issue that's been an intractable issue for a long time, and I think we need to make progress on this issue. But I'm one that believes when most people understand the condition of the infrastructure and make sure that we take care of it, I'm confident that most people want to do that.
So you don't see any poisoning of the atmosphere for working on this road building policy, road maintenance policy?
No, these are both tough issues. They're expensive issues. $8 billion is not cheap, and we need to get beyond this. And I think most people want to get beyond these issues so we can make progress and really focus our scarce resources in a priority manner on what's most important.
Thank you.
We have a question now from Scott Sunner with the Associated Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, we couldn't hear the questions on the phone at first, so I just need to clarify first. You said the new screens on road building will indeed apply to the roadless areas, is that right?
They would apply to any place that we reconstruct or construct roads.
Okay. And then just my follow-up is, given that you already were deeply involved in this program and this study, do you think the timing might not have been good for the president to lay out the challenge on the roadless initiative? It seems in talking with people in the field, they were kind of taken by surprise by that and kind of confused by that. In retrospect, do you think you would have been better off sort of making your arguments on this backlog and then moving forward on the new initiative? Are you hearing from your people in the field about that?
I think we'll probably have the answer to that question in a couple of years. We'll all know the right answer. My view is that it's important that we focus on some of these intractable issues, the issues that have been around for a long time. The approaches that we've taken over the last couple of decades really haven't worked. So I think it's important that we just lay out the issues and attempt to make as much progress as we can. I don't know of an employee in the Forest Service that doesn't want to get beyond most of these issues. We want to be proud of the fact that we've got roads in great condition on the national forests, and in most cases that's not the case.
I think people in the field, though, aren't telling you that they've got concerns about the way this whole thing's been handled.
There are challenges in various parts of the country on these issues. I'd be the first to admit that.
Brent, can you introduce our next caller? We lost Brent.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Tom Vandenbroek with the Milwaukee Journal. Please go ahead.
Hi, Chief Dombeck. Quick question for you. I'm wondering, do you anticipate this will effectively reduce the timber harvest in the national forests?
Probably not. But let me ask, only to perhaps a very minor extent, let me just give you an example. You're in Wisconsin, that happens to be my home state, so I know some of the local stats. On the 1.6 or 1.7 million acres of the Chequamegon and Nicolet, 79% of the forest is within a quarter of a mile of a road. Over the last 5 years, less than 1% of the timber harvest has come out of roadless areas. And so to say there will be no impacts would not be correct, because each locality is different. But Jack or Dale, do you, in your analysis, what have you seen on that issue?
Well, in areas of the national forest that already have roads, there wouldn't be much of an effect on timber harvest. There is a transition process that we talk about in the proposed policy, and that transition process, from the time that this policy gets signed until forest plans are revised using the road analysis procedure. If you want to build a road into an area that was formerly under the moratorium, you need to go through, you need to have a compelling reason test. In order to do that, you need to use a road analysis process, do an environmental impact statement, and you have original forest approval. Now, I suppose the worst case may be that would delay timber harvest that we may otherwise do for a couple of years, but we haven't really quantified exactly what that would be, and we don't expect that to be a huge amount.
We have a question now from Bettina Boxall with the Los Angeles Times. Please go ahead.
Hi, Chief Dombeck. You mentioned that you thought that this policy would result in some decommissioning of roads. Do you have any more of an idea of to what extent that would be? Are we talking about decommissioning 10%, 20%, 50% when you look at the backlog of maintenance needs, the states that these roads are in?
I really think our intent is to have that decision made at the local level rather than dictated from Washington. And the intent of the planning process and the intent of this process is to give local managers and local communities a much better information base to make those decisions from.
And is this policy increase the local input? And when you say local input, are you talking about that of local forestry service officials, or are you talking about that of local community officials?
Local community officials, because as I mentioned in the intro, that really what we want is we want to make sure that we know how the National Forest road system mesh with the needs and the systems of local communities. So I think as we take a look at the increased number of people using the roads are associated with tourism, recreation, lots of other uses, versus the primary reason for building a road, say in the 1930s, 1940s, was probably to harvest timber. So there's really almost in many cases a different objective for that road system that really needs to have the local community, the zoning commission, the planning boards, depending upon where you are, county commissions, townships, involved in a way that they've not been involved to this point.
And with the spokesman's review, Dan Hansen has our next question. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, Chief. Thanks for taking my question. The Forest Service has been criticized in the past for having a large number of roads that aren't on maps. What will assure that these atlases are more accurate?
This is Mike Ash. We've actually already instituted an inventory process, and we're getting audits on those inventories. We have a new system we call our infra. It's a system to keep track of those things, and I guess the assurances are that we will have audits. There'll be a concentrated effort to get all of the, not only the authorized system, but also that unauthorized or unclassified system identified on the maps that we do call atlases.
Mr. Hansen, did you have a follow-up?
Well, is there more money available for that then?
I talked about money a little bit earlier, and we have been requesting more money for road maintenance, and in fact, we have seen increases in that road maintenance budget, and I'm pleased, real pleased to see that.
We have a question now from John Harmon with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Please go ahead.
Chief Dombeck, it sounds like you're not going to be building many roads in the next few years.
We have lots of reconstruction, lots of maintenance work to do, lots of bridge replacement to do, culvert replacement. There's all kinds of work out there that's needed on our roads.
So your priority is going to be this restoration work, this maintenance work. That's going to be your number one priority in the policy, and new roads are going to be secondary to that, or?
We've got to take care of what we have.
I want to switch to the roadless. Down here in the South, a lot of the opponents of the roadless initiative of the president say it's just a kind of a last-minute grab bag by the president while he's still in office to designate more wilderness areas. What do you say to that?
This is an issue that's been on our plate for 30 years or longer. It's been a tough issue. You may recall the roadless area evaluation, locally known as Rare 1 and Rare 2 process. The years of planning, this is not about wilderness, it's not about access, it's about what we do with our remaining large unfragmented tracts of land in the United States. Interesting thing, you're from Atlanta, is that right?
Yes, he is, sir.
What did I just hear on national news about a week ago? Atlanta suburban area has been built up on over 380,000 acres of forest lands. We're losing about 7,000 acres of farmlands, wetlands, other kinds of lands to development. So the question in the United States we need to step back and ask is, what do we do with these last large remaining tracts of land? What do we want it to be like 50 years from now? That's, I think, the question that we need to try to step back and focus on.
This next question comes from the line of Deborah Frazier with the Rocky Mountain News. Please go ahead.
Yes, this public process and this Atlas process, what is the cost, what will be the cost for this, and how difficult will it be, should there be a change in administration, to dismantle this policy?
Well, this is Mike Ash, and let me take a stab at the cost part of this, Deborah. By the way, this is your second time around, right? It'd be very difficult to come up with a cost to call this a standalone process because it is integrated with the other analysis that we do, but certainly there would be some increased costs because we are asking for more emphasis in this area. But we feel overall the costs are insignificant in the business that we ought to be doing.
Deborah, this is Mike Dombeck. I would respond that I think you're going to see a tremendous increase in efficiency and over the long haul a significant savings because the cost of not managing the system and the cost in degradation of water quality and stream sedimentation and some of the other challenges that we face. And what we have here is we have a scientifically based approach that will give us much better, a much more efficient as well as a much more effective way to manage our road system. So over the long haul, I see this as a tremendous savings.
And the second part of my question was, this policy, should there be a change in administration or a change of heart, would it be difficult or relatively easy to do away with it?
Any kind of rulemaking requires counterpart rulemaking to change. You know, we really embarked on this process well over a year ago with the standard National Environmental Policy Act process, the public comment period, review of comments, response to comments, development of alternatives, and any rulemaking is like this. And as I always like to mention when we talk about rulemakings, because they're perhaps one of the more poorly understood parts of the democratic process, is that it puts the same information base in everybody's hands, and it puts every citizen in the United States basically on an equal plane with regard to that information that's available and the ability to comment. And we, in our part of the requirement of the process, is we respond to the issues that are brought forward in that process. So I think it's a good process. It's a healthy process. And my belief is this policy will stand the test of time because it's the right thing to do.
And now with a follow-up question, once again, is Robert Braille with the Boston Globe. Please go ahead.
Yes, Chief Dombeck, I just wanted to see if I can clarify something I thought I heard before with regard to new roads under this policy. I gather that under the process you're putting out, that the criteria for building new roads would be more rigorous than what exists now. Did I hear correctly before that any new road in any forest would require an EIS, and that is different from the way things are now?
I'll let Dale Bosworth answer that.
The way the proposed rule would state it is that if a road were to be built into a roadless area, one of the areas that falls into the moratorium, that it would require an environmental impact statement, it would require a road analysis process, and it would have to meet a compelling need test, and it would require regional forestry approval.
Hey, Brent, do you have any more calls on the line? Because we do have some folks here that locally that would like to ask some questions. And
Yes, indeed. Please proceed. And as a matter of fact, at this time, we have no further questions from the phone.
Great. Okay. The floor is again. I did interrupt you, sir. If you'd like to ask that follow-up question, I cut you off that earlier.
I guess, how concerned are you about this being applied uniformly across the national forest system, given the divergent views from community to community?
Well, I think you'll see the analysis process uniformly applied because of the requirements. And I think if you take a look at this road analysis, you'll see it's really very user-friendly in the questions that it asks. And in some cases, questions won't apply. For example, a question would be, how does road development and use affect water quality in a municipal watershed? Well, if you go up here to Mill Creek, you have a municipal watershed. And in fact, I think we've got 3,400 municipal watersheds in the country that would apply to. But yet, there are many parts of the national forest that are not municipal watersheds. Another question would be, how does the road system affect access for collecting special forest products? And that might be an issue that's related to Native American uses. And there's I'll let you take a look at this as soon as we're done here. So the process, the guidelines are uniform. What's applied varies depending upon the local situation.
You might mention that that's available on the website. It's Chief Dean a little earlier. Roads analysis process is also up on that. It's been there since October, I believe.
When will the public, I get the feeling from this that there's going to be a huge analysis of all the roads in your inventory. Let's say when you guys get to the Wasatch Cache and you're doing that, when will the public have an opportunity to say, I think this road should be saved, I think this road should be decommissioned, will there be things? Will this guy from Save Our King, if you have a chance to come in and say, get rid of that road? How will that work?
I guess the way I'd see it working is the first is the forest plans. Forest plans are revised. The road analysis process will be done as part of the development forest plan. And so there's a big involvement, big uptake involvement from the public at that point. As we do other kinds scale or landscape kinds of assessments. We would also use the road analysis process at that point, and that'd be another opportunity for people to get involved to make sure that we're hearing the different viewpoints about the roads that should stand alone.
That would be determined, at the local level through the application of this process. And one of the things that I think people will like about this dynamic is to, allow the community of interest, the community leaders to sit down at a table and take a look at, what is this road system look like now? And then we take a look at, well, these are the dollars that we have to maintain that system and set up the priorities and then ask some, very tough questions about, well, which are the most important roads? We know we've got to channel the scarce dollars we have there. And then really at that level grapple with what do we do with the others.
I'd just like to add one thing to that. There's places around the National Forest System where there's a lot of roads that really aren't even being used. In fact, they can't even be used. They've got vegetation growing up in them, but they're still part of the system in some cases. And in some cases, they've never been put to bed. They've never had the drainage flow. They never had been restored. In a lot of cases, those are some of the roads that we would decommission as well as others. And it varies depending on what part of the country it is.
I don't have a single program manager or forest supervisor that tells me they have enough money. My family at home says the same thing.
I'm sure you know there's a wealth of scientific data showing that road density correlates with species loss. So when it comes to conservation of native species, in general, it seems desirable to eliminate roads. And I wonder if there's anything in the book you've held up there to ask questions like, how will the road network affect lynx habitat and lynx conservation? And it's a pertinent question given that the Canada lynx is up and living soon. And related to that, another question, how will the elected officials have any input on this? They don't know anything about these issues in most cases.
Let me just read you a couple of the questions here, because all those issue areas are covered, in fact, are among some of the most high visibility issues. How and where does the road system contribute to fishing, poaching, or direct habitat loss for species at risk? How and where does the road system facilitate the introduction of non-native aquatics? That same question would be asked about terrestrial species and array of those. And like I say, I'd be glad to take a look at this as soon as we're done here.
Well, remember a second question, if I may. Our elected local officials here don't know anything about these issues, so how is local input going to influence the decisions?
Well, I think one of the things that the collaborative process, call it meetings, call it cooperation, call it collaboration, what you will, is really to get people more involved and to better understand what the whole array of issues are. Because in the past, I think we kind of took a look at issues in sort of a piecemeal fashion. And, in the 80s and 90s, we moved into interdisciplinary teams and concepts of ecosystem management. We had a better understanding that all things are connected, not only in the biological, physical world, but the socioeconomics drive issues as well. So I think we've got a much better understanding, and I think this is a tremendous effort to move us into a new approach.
We may or may not appreciate, as Mike said earlier, that some of the roads we might anticipate decommissioning might represent school bus routes or mail routes or emergency access routes, especially in areas such as the Midwest where there's such a tight network of county and town roads and then mingle with national forest roads.
Garbage in Nevada. You decommissioned a road, the local wanted to reopen it, federal judge stopped it. They've now now collected symbolically 10,000 shovels. 4th of July, many of them say, power high water, we're going to do it. You're going to have federal marshals out there protecting the road. They're going to be arrests. What are you going to do to stop them if they get out there and start rebuilding it with backhoes?
Part of what the judge also ordered is the mediation process that I believe is in progress right now. And my hope is that we can get beyond those issues by then.
But if it doesn't, it comes to an impasse. And they go out there and do it anyway. What's the Forest Service and federal government's reaction? You just go watch them do it, and they come back and tear it down, or what's going to happen?
Every time I do the if-then, I get in trouble. We just have to take a look at, the situation. We've got a forest supervisor in place there. I was out there a couple of weeks ago with the regional forester and the forest supervisor, met with a wide variety of people and employees and local interest groups from the county commissioners to Trout Unlimited to the DNR director and others, and there's a lot of people working hard to bring some of those issues to resolution, and I think we really need to give them a chance.
Is Forest Service will stand fast on no change, or are you willing to negotiate?
Well, we need to let the mediation process work, and Fish and Wildlife Service will be involved as the bull trout issue is an important part of that, so we need to let that process work and not second guess it prematurely.
I hear you emphasizing over and over the role that local communities play in this, and you also say that everybody is declared because it's all national land, belongs to everyone. But you're going to run into really nitty-gritty problems like the one in Nevada, where local interests are not the same as national interests. Is there any sort of directive embodied in this where you help people determine how to weigh these two kinds of interests?
Well, I think part of we're also in a process of revising and updating our planning regulations that will hopefully be done in, by the summer. And I think there's a new dynamic of governance evolving, and it's evolving for a lot of different reasons in a lot of different places. But I see, I see things like watershed restoration councils popping up in various parts of the country where local groups. The West isn't a monoculture. You take a look at the diversity of people living in different small communities that we really didn't have in the past. That whole dynamic is changing significantly. That's one important point. The second important point is that when people sit down and try to respect each other's opinions and see the points of view that are out there, I think you'll see a different dynamic evolve. We sort of need to move resource management out of the office, out of the conference room, and get people out to take a look at it. Because as I've looked at, and we and all the agencies really, we've got some tough issues on our plate, and we take a look at in some areas they seem to be successful. And what's common to those areas where they are successful? There's 3 or 4 things. Number one is they begin to focus on common goals, and sometimes that takes a while because you can spend your time in negativity, or you can spend your time working where there's agreement, and that has to evolve. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to let everybody that wants to play, be at the table. If they're not allowed at the table, the next time we see them is often in court. And the third important point, which includes respect, but that's to respect the individual's decision space. For example, those of us that are sitting at the table here work for the Forest Service. Our responsibility is to implement the laws passed by Congress, signed by the President. That's our decision space, and then to work with evolving case law. A rancher's got to stay in business. Otherwise, this ranch is going to be subdivided. The Wilderness Society doesn't want to see that. As we talk about open space, so we've got to maintain healthy economies, and if a corporate interest is involved, they have stockholders to respond to. So we need to work in a positive way to build that kind of dynamic. Our Are we ever going to completely agree on everything? Probably not. I've been married 25 years and don't agree on everything at home.
I guess what I was really trying to say then, is there any kind of difference between the present balance with local versus competing national interests? Does this change and shift this when you keep emphasizing how important the local communities are? Do they get more of a say than they used to, or is it the same as they used to have?
I think the difference, in the United States, with all the owners of all the public lands are basically all the citizens of the United States. And I might point out that the monies to support the infrastructure needs and the stewardship of these lands also comes from all over the country as well. The thing that's different in this process is I think it really calls for meshing the local transportation network with that of the national forest. So we look at it as, in a holistic manner, as a unit to meet the needs of managing the national forest, of the local community, of people wanting to vacation, hike, bike, log, whatever it is that the activities are there. It's not a separate system, independent of others, and I think that's the difference.
I would add one other additional point to what Mike was saying, and that is that this proposed policy requires the use of this roads analysis procedure, and this procedure requires and uses the term local public involvement. So although I think the agency's tried hard to do that in the past, it's really a requirement now. One other comment I would make on the overall balance between local and national needs, and that is that balance has always been an issue for Forest Service managers since this agency existed. One thing that I guess that point I would make is that if local people came up with a solution that, for example, violated some national law, well then the national law would govern. Hopefully that wouldn't be the case, and then if local people can agree on a solution, you can help move forward.
Even decommissioning a road is expensive, costs some money. Where are you going to get all this money from if you've got an $8 billion backlog? I mean, even taking a road out of use takes some money, and is that money going to be forthcoming?
We are in a dialogue with the rest of the administration, OMB, and Congress on these issues, and there's money is always in short supply. There's always more work to do than there's money to go around to do it all, and that's why prioritizing this is so important. And we look at ecosystem management, watershed management, call it what you will, I think we're looking at a much more integrated way of looking at issues. If we want to go in and take a look at a watershed, typically there's a whole variety of issues we need to take a look at. Forest health, endangered species, water quality, invasive species, noxious weeds, sedimentation problems, the road infrastructure. All of these kinds of things need to be taken a look at. And what we're doing now is embarking on several new and exciting things, and one is called stewardship contracting, where it was in the past that we had a commercial timber sale contract to go in and log, and now we're taking a look at, well, what about the wood that is of low economic or no economic value that's perhaps resulting in high fire risk? So we need to do some thinning where we historically maybe had maybe 20 or 30 trees per acre, and now we might have 1,000 with concern about ladder fuels. And when you have that kind of a situation, you also have higher susceptibility for insect infestations, and this is all part of a much longer story, which we could talk about all afternoon, that is a result of complete fire suppression for a long time, so we didn't have the cleansing effect of fire. But the point is we need to be taking a look at all these things as they interact, because if we go ahead and, say, fix a road or decommission a road that's bleeding sediment into a stream, but we've got some other problems from, say, noxious weeds that are also not holding soil, and we've got stream sedimentation, we're not accomplishing the goal. So we're looking at this as a unit.
We have a question now from the line of Scott Sunner with the Associated Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, I'm sorry, I need to be clear again. In regard to the compelling need test, is it harder to meet that compelling need test in a roadless area than it is a roaded, or for purposes of your rule today, proposed rule, do you treat that compelling need the same way on both lands?
Compelling need test only applies to the unroaded and roadless. It does not apply to the roaded areas during the transition period.
Okay. And then when you come with the roadless proposal, the alternatives, with your roadless proposal down the road, would it be a similar kind of thing to this, and then you would outline sort of the hoops you jump through so as to build a road, or is it more likely that'll take the form of alternatives that say these areas should be protected, these areas should be made wilderness, these areas should be studied further, these areas should be opened up?
The roadless proposal is not about wilderness. It'll be about how to maintain our large unfragmented tracts of land, how to maintain the values that are important on those landscapes.
But would you think that will take the form of alternatives that would designate land certain ways, or would you? You sort of set up a framework here today, sort of hoops you have to jump through to build a road, and you're going to make that tougher. Is a similar kind of thing we would expect for the roadless? I think some people think you're going to say, we want to protect half of 50 million acres or something like that.
I think the question that will be addressed is really, how much do we, expand our road network, or another way to come at it is shall we be building roads at all in these large unfragmented tracts of land for other values that might be water quality, the need to maintain habitats for species that have large home ranges, a variety of questions like that. But what this will do is I think this will provide a tremendous information base for not only the roadless areas, but also for both the roaded and the roadless areas, and that will be applied by states, by counties, by large private landowners, by national forests. So I'm real pleased with this road analysis process.
Brent, do you have any other callers?
We have no further questions at this time. Please continue.
Okay. Any more questions from the floor?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your interest.
And just one other piece, just for your notebooks. Let me just give you that web address one more time. It is, one more time, the web address is www.fs.news/roads with an S on the end of it. Thank you very much.